My name is Daniel Clark. I am a business developer for EM Waslick as well. And today I will be focusing on the Big Middle, which is our topic here. And as you can see, that's the region that's highlighted in blue here in the middle of our country. This is the region that our company operates in. And it's an often understated region with huge opportunity and notable growth. So for me, I'm pretty excited to talk today. I get to talk about my home area, and hopefully you can take something out of this and learn more about a part of the U.S. that you might not have known as much about coming into this. To give an indication of the size of this region, it's about 2,600 kilometers from east to west. So that'd be about going from Amsterdam to Moscow. And from north to south, it's about 1,700 kilometers. So that's about going from Madrid up to Amsterdam. So this is quite a large region that we're talking about here. Filling in more details about this region, we have the population. It's a little less than 1/3 of the overall population. The per capita income is a little bit less, but we'll talk later about the purchasing power and the cost of living in the Big Middle compared to other areas in the US. And you'll see kind of why that this actually might not be as big of a gap as it might appear. Looking at real GDP, it's about 1/4 of the overall US. And the Big Middle overall is a highly educated region. So you can see here higher high school graduation rates and higher college participation rates as well. Okay, so going on into the industry. So here we have two lists. We have the top overall industries, and then we have the top relative industries. The top overall industries is the percent employment for each industry overall. And the top relative industries are the percent more common by employment in the Big Middle versus other regions. So the top industries you can see are industries that are very relevant for all parts of the US, whereas in the top relative industries um, table, you can see the areas that the Big Middle specializes in a bit more. So some examples, manufacturing, of course, we're going to talk more about this going forward, but has a history of being an important industry for this region. Some companies that have been here for a long time that you might have heard of, Ford, GM, of course, the automotive industries. Boeing is now headquartered in Chicago, and John Deere are just some examples. Going on to agriculture, this has been a very important industry as well. Here in Wisconsin, we're known as the dairy state, and overall in the Midwest, we're known as the breadbasket for kind of providing a lot of the agriculture coming from the US traditionally. Next, going on to management, this includes the management of companies and enterprises. The next one there, though, finance and insurance, I want to highlight just because I think not a lot of us would expect to see this on the Big Middle's top relative industries. However, there are many large US financial institutions and insurance companies from here. Some that you might be aware of are US Bank, BMO Harris Bank out of Chicago, and then Ally Financial, an online financial institution that's been growing a lot in the last 10 years. Next, we've got a healthcare. You may have heard of the Mayo Clinic. That's a world-renowned research and hospital institution, and that is located in Rochester, Minnesota, here in the Big Middle. And there are many research institutions attached with hospital systems and the university systems throughout this part of the country. And next, wholesalers. So some of the US's largest wholesalers are actually located throughout the Big Middle. And part of this has to do with the obvious logistical advantage of being in the middle of the United States, being equidistant from the East and West Coast and the South, as well as the cost of infrastructure, which we'll get into later as well. So today we're going to talk about these three growing sectors specifically. So advanced manufacturing, biotech, and tech. And we'll start with advanced manufacturing. So earlier we had mentioned that manufacturing is such an important industry to the Big Middle. And given that large importance in the history around that, a lot of analysts are suggesting that this region will continue to be a key player in the growth of US advanced manufacturing. Already, advanced manufacturing accounts for about 10% of economic output in the Big Middle. And Industry 4.0 is continuing to be a larger focus for our country. And a lot of the nation's top engineering schools throughout the Big Middle are continuing to apply this education to folks who are then getting jobs in the big middle as well. So it's getting applied to education system and to the workforce. So we are seeing a growth here with advanced manufacturing. Specifically, The Economist did an article about the Midwest and the Big Middle called America's Mittelstand, and they did a big expose about different industries in the Midwest, and they really focused on manufacturing. So, for those who aren't familiar, Mittelstand is a German word actually, and it refers to these small to medium-sized German companies. And there's a large partnership between large companies and these Mittelstanden as Germany moves into 4.0, which has been a very key focal point for the German government the past decade or so. This Economist article is making the case for a similar partnership with advanced manufacturing and mid-sized manufacturing companies located throughout the Midwest that have that infrastructure and want to apply it into the future. So this graph here, I think, is also very telling of how important the manufacturing sector is for the Midwest and for the Big Middle. As you can see, this shows the manufacturing as percent of gross state product, and the top list here that they have, all of these states that they listed are actually in the Big Middle. So this kind of reaffirms that point that manufacturing is definitely a Midwest industry. Next, moving on to biotech. So here we have a few companies that you might have heard of that are in the big middle. Again, Pfizer, of course, that's headquartered in New York, but one of their largest manufacturing facilities is located in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which is a city located in the northern part of the big middle. Boston Scientific and Medtronic, these are medical device manufacturing companies that are both headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Promega is a enzyme manufacturing company headquartered right here in Madison, Wisconsin. And AbbVie, you might have heard of as well, a biopharmaceutical company in Chicago. So when looking at investments in biotech in the big middle, we have been seeing promising increases in the past 5 years. Specifically in 2017, that was a huge year for biotech investments, and that those numbers appear to remain steady as well. This AP article here kind of highlights some of the information that about this investment boom, where there was a 43% increase in investments in 2017 that remained steady in 2018 and up until now, which kind of signifies a steady investment and a sustainable growth of this sector. Additionally, when you're looking at investments by sector, right, you're looking for an even distribution, which is what you found here. So healthcare IT, biotech, medical device, all of these different subsectors are evenly receiving investments, which also give further proof that this is a sustainable industry for this region. Additionally, going into tech, I'm not going to sit here and say that the Midwest is the new Silicon Valley of the United States. However, the U.S., the big middle specifically, has seen lots of growth from tech companies, and we're seeing a lot of migration from tech workers into this part of the U.S. So here are some examples of tech companies who have grown in the big middle and thrived. The first is Epic. This is a $3 billion healthcare software company. Again, that's 3 billion, not million. That's located right here near us in Madison, Wisconsin. So Epic, it's a large healthcare software company. So for example, if you were to come to the US and for some reason need some sort of medical attention, the hospital that you would go to would have a greater than 65% chance of being hosted or using Epic software. So again, that just kind of shows the scale of this company. Next, Morningstar, if you are involved with any financial investments online, it's a fintech company and they provide research. You might have heard of them. Grubhub, if you've ever been in the US and ordered sandwich and not using Uber Eats, you might have used Grubhub. Again, this is a very competitive market space and they're doing very well out of Chicago as well. And Accenture, their US headquarters is in Chicago. It used to be their overall headquarters, which is now moved to Dublin. But yes, Accenture is still based in the US, or their US headquarters is still based in Chicago. and they do tech uh, tech consulting. Finally, going on to Liquid Web. This is a cloud solution software company located in Lansing, Michigan. So again, in the big middle. And this is also rising to the top of a very competitive market space in cloud solutions. So going further, I mentioned earlier tech workers and their migration is kind of coming to the Midwest and the big middle. This article here is suggesting that based on LinkedIn data, a lot of the hype around tech workers moving to Texas, perhaps Austin or Florida, really isn't quite as accurate as others might have thought. Based on this LinkedIn data, it actually shows that the largest tech migration increase took place right here into Madison, Wisconsin. Other large areas that they reference were Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Cleveland, Ohio, both cities in the big middle as well. So, as we kind of talked a little bit about the advantages of being in the big middle, and here are some more kind of references to why perhaps workers and employers are moving to this region. Overall, the cost of living, as you can see, is much lower. The purchasing power, the quality of life, even statistics on traffic can influence people to want to move to this part of the country. So you can see, right, cost of living index, the median hourly salary, wage, engineering salary, transportation costs, and the big one, which is median rent, which a lot of young folks who don't own houses yet are paying these monthly rents. They prefer to be paying the sum that they see in the big middle compared to California and New York. So as you can see, these differences are expected, right? You would expect to pay more in California and New York than in somewhere in this part of the country, in the big middle. However, when you put these numbers together, you kind of see the stark contrast between the expenses of these different regions. Okay, so this is information that I obtained from the Swedish American Chamber, and this highlights some of the camaraderie between Sweden and the Big Middle. So as you can see, many residents in the Big Middle are of Swedish descent originally. Many jobs are created via Swedish companies, and a large sum of exports are sent to Sweden from the Big Middle, which is actually 1/3 of the total value from the US. Going on, here are just a list of some companies that are Swedish companies that have offices or headquarters in the US. So, Business Sweden office in Chicago, AstraZeneca, SKF, SSAB, and Atos Medical, which actually has their US headquarters about an hour from us in Berlin, Wisconsin, New Berlin, Wisconsin. And next, looking at Scandinavia in the big middle, this is kind of on a lighter note, but it's looking at the cultural impact that Scandinavia has had specifically on the big middle. As you can see, there are universities and research institutions that were founded and created by Scandinavian immigrants. The one listed here, Augustana College, is actually started from a Swedish immigrant, and it still bears the colors of the Swedish flag. Additionally, its influence can be seen in the recreational sports that we play to this day. Here in Wisconsin and to our neighbors in Minnesota, hockey is a huge sport. Typically, the top two teams in the US for our college teams are the Minnesota and Wisconsin hockey schools. Additionally, if you look at the NHL, a lot of our best players come from this region as well. Additionally, ice skating, cross-country skiing, ski jumping, even some sports teams have the name, like the Minnesota Vikings, for example, which is based right here in the big middle. And then finally, in a more obvious sense, you can see the tradition live on through festivals like the Midsummer Festival that takes place every summer in Minneapolis, and also in the culinary impact, specifically Kanelsnegel and lefse, which my grandmother is actually Norwegian, and we have lefse for every major holiday, which is really great. And of course, there's herring as well, which I had to include. So getting into a summary overall on the big middle, again, this is a region that's very overlooked and understated. There are huge cost-saving advantages amongst a talent-heavy pool of workers and a tradition in world-class manufacturing. The big middle has predicted growth in industries that will grow in relevance with the new Biden administration. So there is potential for growth, and there is a lot of statistics and information that supports growth for this region moving forward. Additionally, the interest in the region is growing, as we talked about those LinkedIn statistics and the investments. So, from a employee perspective and an employer perspective, there are more reasons for people to move here. And finally, again, on that lighter note, the region is built from Scandinavian roots, and it's an area where many Scandinavian traditions still live on. And this is essentially a very happy environment for Scandinavians and really folks from all over the world to do business in.